It begins with a storm. Raindrops striking bare forest earth, a flurry of snowflakes in the mountains. The spring thaw unleashes it to lower elevations, to join forces and form bigger waters of many uses. It journeys hundreds of miles to irrigate the crops that provide us food, brings millions of dollars to the economy for recreation enthusiasts, provides nourishment and lush habitat for an abundant array of wildlife. It's the water that fuels our daily lives. It generates power, our lifestyles, our recreation, our drinking water. In the harsh environment of Arizona, water is our single most important resource, but it's also becoming increasingly scarce. A severe drought that began in 1999 has reduced our available surface water. Overgrown forests and devastating fires are stealing from the watersheds. The population explosion in our region increases demand, while the supply becomes more stressed.
So what is our water outlook for this state? A barren landscape or a land of plenty? The answer probably lies somewhere in the middle. We're not suddenly going to become water rich, but it's certainly too early to throw in the towel for the future.
Solid decisions about conserving water today can help guarantee a clean supply of water for Arizona's future, because every drop counts. Solving Arizona's water challenges is like assembling a complex connected puzzle. The centerpiece is the Colorado River. Water from the Colorado is delivered to Phoenix and Tucson via this amazing 336-mile Central Arizona Project canal system. It's the source for the majority of our drinking water and the water we use on a daily basis. It's also essential for irrigating local farms that we rely on as a food source and a major portion of Arizona's economy. But the mighty Colorado comes with some strings attached. 7 western states depend on it for water, including Arizona, Wyoming, New Mexico, Colorado, Utah, Nevada, and California, along with Mexico. They all have a voice in deciding how the river's water will be used, and it's not always a friendly conversation. States, cities, federal agencies, farmers, and environmental groups are often at odds with each other.
I think it was Mark Twain that said, in the West, whiskey's for drinking and water's for fighting, and that's really true. There's almost no more emotional natural resource issue than water.
Every drop of the Colorado is already spoken for and often struggles to reach its delta in the Gulf of California, creating devastating effects for wildlife and the people in the area who depend on it.
Historically, we asked our water managers when we needed additional water to go out and find new sources of water. That's becoming increasingly difficult to do, and it's very expensive. If we become increasingly reliant on groundwater, it's really just a slow road to hell. There's no way back from that.
So, we need to focus on protecting waterways wholly within the state. The Verde and Salt River systems combine to meet about 30% of Metro Phoenix water needs. They don't hold as much water as the Colorado, but they're vital because Arizonans can decide how to use the water. The Verde stretches over almost 200 miles of wilderness. It's Arizona's only congressionally designated wild and scenic river.
The Verde River serves a lot of different purposes. Ecologically, it's really critical habitat for the birds, the fish, the wildlife that live here. For the people, it's a source of recreation. It's fun to swim, it's fun to fish, it's fun to float. And agriculturally, it's important for growing crops. Not everybody's thinking about where their water comes from, but any given day, some portion of your water is probably coming from this river. It's a daily part of a lot of people's lives, and it's an important part of the economy.
In the 1800s, it attracted farmers to settle the Verde Valley and remains the nucleus of this growing community.
I'm our Verde River Water Transactions Manager. So I basically work here in the Verde Valley on water projects. I work with farmers and the community on how are we going to use our water efficiently. The Nature Conservancy is trying to use science to really bring solutions to the table. A lot of the science we bring is conservation and river oriented, but we also bring expertise in for farming operations. so that they can operate efficiently. So trying to produce more water in the river, but also trying to ensure that farmland is more productive than it was when we started. It's time intensive. We spend a lot of time talking through problems. We try to understand what are the concerns that a producer has, what are the concerns that the community might have, but also what are the ecological needs of the river.
That means striking a balance between the water needs of the community versus individual needs.
We see throughout the Verde Valley, people are really interested in how do they use the water as wisely as possible so that they can leave that in the river. So while not everybody's in agreement about what the right thing is in the right place all the time, the community is coming together to try to solve this problem collectively so that we're finding solutions that meet all of those things.
This is Hauser Farms. We've been here since the late 60s. We farm about 600 acres in the Verde Valley. The sweet corn's right behind me. Just planted it yesterday. That's what we're most famous for, I guess you could say.
You could definitely say that. Every summer, the Hauser's sweet corn attracts aficionados from all over Arizona and other states. That brings more tourism dollars into the Verde Valley.
It's a great area for corn. It's a good climate. We got good water supply from the river. The Verde River is important because we don't have any other water supply. We're very into keeping the river flowing and doing things that we can control to help as much as possible, but still get the water that we need to make a living and sustain crops.
Agriculture is significant to Arizona, both as a local food source and as a major economic contributor. It also carries a sizable water footprint. About 70% of all water used in the state goes to farms. That means improvements on efficiency out here can translate into big water savings.
The things we're doing here are about how do we become efficient users of the water so that we're maximizing the economic returns while we're maximizing the use of the water that we do have. The first step in managing water is making sure you're taking it from the river and delivering it to the farm as efficiently as possible. When we're using it more efficiently in the ditch or on the farm, we can leave it in the river for the benefit of fish and wildlife. In the past, water was just taken from the river and conveyed down the ditch. What wasn't used in the ditch by the users was just pushed out the other end. And so that took a lot of excess water out of the river because that conveyance system wasn't efficiently operating.
So the Nature Conservancy brought new technology to the Verde. They installed an automated head gate at the top of the 8-mile-long ditch that draws irrigation water from the river. The gate can be controlled remotely by a cell phone, which saves users time and keeps more water in the Verde.
And I think the farmers who are here in the valley are doing everything they can to make sure that their farming operations are sustainable into the future and as efficient as possible while still preserving the river.
Water's a resource. It's very important to us and we treat it as such. Right now we're all flood irrigation. We're as efficient as we possibly can be with flood irrigation. There are other methods that are a lot more efficient. So we're looking into doing drip irrigation.
The Nature Conservancy is helping the Hausers explore which drip irrigation system will work best on a 6.5-acre test plot. Both sides want to know it will work practically, and not just on paper, before they spend the money to implement it on a large scale.
Some of those little lessons from a conservation side where we think putting the system in is going to be great and that will solve the problem, but the reality is we have to put in systems that work for farmers, or farmers don't keep them in very long and our investment is lost.
We like the idea of sustainable agriculture. We're a willing partner in doing that. We would like to see more water in the river, and as long as we're getting to meet our needs, to grow a crop and make a living, we're happy.
Building partnerships between the various groups that have water interests is a critical part of what the Nature Conservancy does. It's not always easy, since water affects so many people's lives and livelihoods.
And so it becomes kind of an emotional decision-making process, and we try to make sure that we're looking at how do we make agriculture fit with conservation, because really we're not interested in excluding one or the other. We really want this system to work collectively. When we sit down and we talk, we solve problems. If you don't sit down and you don't talk, you don't solve problems. One side picks a solution and that may or may not work for the other side. Agriculture and conservation need to be at that table, and so do municipalities and communities.
The Verde Valley was originally settled as an agricultural community to provide food for soldiers and miners. Over a century later, farmers still have deep roots here, which is important to maintain.
Protecting ag isn't just something that the Nature Conservancy wants to do, it's something the community of Camp Verde is interested in. So it's critical that we work with the farmers and we solve their problems at the same time we're trying to put water in the river. So it's not just the Nature Conservancy's idea, this is really a community solution.
There's a lot of people who live here who care about the river, who care about the farms, who don't want to see them developed into housing development. We've lost 2 farms in this valley to development, one of which was bought by developers. They subdivided everything and then they went broke. So there's no houses on it or any, just the streets and the lots and no houses. It's just sitting there. So it's kind of a gut punch when you have to drive by that every day. It's a great area and it's small. It's not grown up like Phoenix is. We're still nice and small and rural, so that's the way we prefer it. I love it here. I don't want to go anywhere else. I want to stay here forever, and hopefully my kids do too, and keep it going.
Snow and rainfall in Arizona's high country forests are critical to our water supply. But right now, much of that forest is overgrown, which means less water is able to flow downstream. And the mass overgrowth can result in devastating fires. And this is one reason the Nature Conservancy is bringing technology to the woods.
Northern Arizona is home to the largest ponderosa pine forest in the world. Over 2 million acres of continuous ponderosa pines stretch from just south of the Grand Canyon all the way over into New Mexico. And it's a very important watershed for snowpack and rain that drains into the salt Verde rivers. The connection between healthy forests and healthy water supplies is strong. An overgrown forest uses a lot more water than a healthy forest. Every one of those trees is like a straw pulling water out of our water supplies.
Private logging operations are thinning overgrown areas to help the forest return to healthy levels. Fewer trees drinking from the watershed means a better quality of forest for the wildlife that live there, and ultimately more water downstream for Arizonans.
They're reducing the numbers of trees per acre and leaving them in groups so that if one tree was to get struck by lightning, it might burn, or the ones immediately around it might burn, but there's good open spaces to keep the fire from building up too much momentum.
The era of fire suppression has greatly altered the density of our trees. So in areas that we used to have big open grassy spots and a few trees, we now have many small trees filling in. And we now are in a structure that's much more susceptible to catastrophic fire.
In 2011, the Wallow Fire roared through forests in the White Mountains. The largest wildfire in Arizona's history, claimed over $100 million in estimated costs for fire suppression and rehabilitation, and left more than 100 million acres of charred wilderness in its wake. Water quality in scorched areas suffers as well.
Our watersheds are affected by these fires after the fire is put out by sedimentation. Our reservoirs are at risk of filling up with dirt and logs, and the costs associated with that are very great. Preventing the catastrophic effects of fire is protecting our water supplies.
Huge fires definitely alter the natural beauty of the forests, but they can also change fire management policies in a positive way. The Nature Conservancy is one of the stakeholder groups involved in the Forest Restoration Initiative, or FORFRI. FORFRI's goal is to treat 50,000 acres a year. That project is clearing the way for thinning operations and changing the Arizona logging model from the last 100 years.
Many years ago, our forests were logged by removing the largest, oldest trees in the woods. What we're looking at now is an economic model around removing the small and medium trees. The ecological needs are driving our industries in Arizona right now.
While it's great that science-based solutions are winning out over economics, the truth is that time and money also need to be saved to make large-scale projects like this work.
The reality of these projects, they're very large scale. Projects like this haven't occurred before. So we're trying to create a favorable environment for this to take place.
Economics is a big factor of what the Nature Conservancy is working on right now. We're testing new equipment and new methods of designing these treatments to try to reduce the cost both for the Forest Service and for the loggers.
As we scale up, we need to make it more efficient, and that means using some new tools and some new technology.
Technology like equipping Forest Service marking crews with GPS-enabled tablets instead of cans of paint when they walk through the forest to make decisions on which trees need to be cut and which ones stay.
And they'll say, well, we have 25 trees in this group and we want 10. So they will use a stylus and create a little shape on that screen, designate it as leave 10 trees in this spot, and then they'll move on to the next one. We're then able to take these maps that the marking crews are creating and put them into the cab of the machine removing the trees. So they're given very specific information about what to do and where to do it.
Early tests with the tablets have shown marking crews can be 5 times more efficient than the paint and hike method.
And then also we're putting monitoring data in the hands of the loggers now. So the loggers aren't just out cutting trees, they're collecting data. We're able to use that information to assess the changes that we're making across our forests at a great scale at a very minimal cost. If we want to be able to thin 50,000 acres a year, we need to be able to track that work at that scale. So it's really a win-win scenario when the Forest Service can effectively lay out these projects and prep them for the loggers, and the loggers can implement these restoration projects effectively.
And it's a win for water too, which makes it a win for all of us.
So as we restore the natural conditions of our forest, we're going to have more water staying in the ground. That's eventually going to drain through our streams and rivers into things like the Verde River and the Salt River, which are very important for the communities here in Arizona.
A clean, healthy water supply for everyone takes cooperation from groups at federal, state, and local levels. It's all about striking a balance.
Our water, our air, our food supplies all come from nature. So finding that balance of maintaining a healthy environment and a healthy economy is really the key to long-term success. Water is vital to our communities, to our food production, to us as people. It's our most precious natural resource, and increasingly, it's the most important natural resource globally. It's really becoming the new oil.
To protect that resource, the Nature Conservancy is asking Arizona corporations and communities to invest in a water fund that benefits the Salt and Verde rivers.
In many cases, the people living in the Valley of the Sun receive the benefits of water that flows down from our mountains, from our forests, down our rivers. But that water is impacted by the way we manage our forests, by the way that farming is conducted upstream. One of the great things about this approach is that it brings our upstream and downstream users together. We're all part of the same state, we're all part of the same river basin. And this is an approach for people to work together on coming up with solutions. A few years ago, the state put together a commission that I participated in that documented there was going to be a gap between our future demand for water and our supply of water. And they identified a number of different strategies, from water conservation to water reuse, and included things like taking care of our watersheds and working with farmers, things like through the water fund. In combination, those projects could definitely close that gap.
The Nature Conservancy is already working to improve forest health and farm efficiency. But the Water Fund would help them take further steps to help farmers like the Hausers, who are threatened by water scarcity and land development.
Through the Water Fund, we'd be able to invest in two things. One is to improve the irrigation efficiency on their operation, but also to acquire a voluntary conservation agreement on their land to keep it in agriculture instead of subdivision.
When you put in houses, oftentimes those people are still using irrigation, flood irrigation. They're also pumping groundwater for their domestic use. But oftentimes they also take away the riparian vegetation that's key to the health of the river. So the conservation easement is one tool we can use to achieve both protecting the farmlands, protecting the riparian areas, and limiting water use over time.
It's very important to me and my family to keep, not just for right now, but for years and years into the future, knowing that this will always be a farm. That's what we're trying to do right now, do what's right by the land and keep it protected.
A severe drought in the 1890s, back before Arizona was even a state, spurred leadership to streamline the dam and canal systems that help manage our water now. Once again, we're in a drought and at a crossroads where progressive ideas can help the future of water conservation, because every drop counts.
How we address and manage our forests, that can create a difference.
So I think it's about planning how we want to grow as a state and how do we want to use our water resources as efficiently as possible. Everybody needs to be there looking for a solution, and I think it's important that we all come to the table with the solution as the goal.
Nobody wins if a community goes dry. Nobody wins if we lose our agriculture. So I think Arizona is in a good place as long as we continue to act. And really, it's not just about someone else doing something. We sometimes think that one person can't make a difference, but 3 or 4 million people acting together can make a huge difference.
Together we are making a difference. Today, each person uses less water per day than they did 30 years ago. And it's not limited to choices we make at home.
Getting involved, it's not somebody else's responsibility to figure this out. It's all of our responsibility. And to the degree that our leaders understand that these issues are important to us, it's going to become important to them. And we also have an opportunity to invest in organizations like the Nature Conservancy in our work to try to maintain a healthy environment and a healthy community.
Support doesn't need to involve paid memberships. Following conservation groups on social media and sharing tips lets your friends know that conservation is important to you, and it might be important to them too. If you shop online, you can select the Nature Conservancy as the charity Amazon donates to as part of their Smiles program.
For a long time, people thought of protecting nature as something you did from people. You protected nature from people. We see it differently. We see that we're protecting nature for people, that we're all interconnected. We're dependent on nature. And nature anymore is now dependent on people in so many different ways.
Everything in nature is connected. The water, essential for all living things. The soil, from which life springs out. The trees and wildlife that populate our forests. Even the bustling human populations in the rural and metro areas. Alter one of those elements, and there's a ripple effect with the others. But the change can be positive.